At minus 70 degrees Celsius, the laws of physics rewrite themselves. Standard construction steel turns as fragile as glass, shattering under a simple hammer blow. If bare skin touches a metallic door handle, the moisture on the flesh freezes instantly, bonding skin to steel with a grip so violent that pulling away leaves behind a painful patch of torn tissue. The simple act of breathing becomes an audible struggle. The moisture expelled from human lungs crystallizes the second it leaves the lips, falling to the frozen ground with a soft, paper-thin rustle. A phenomenon the native inhabitants of this frozen wilderness refer to as the whisper of stars. This is not a temporary winter storm. It is the permanent reality of Siberia, a frozen giant sprawling across more than 13 million square kilometers. This territory is so vast that if it were an independent country, it would easily be the largest on Earth. Yet, the most profound mystery of this frozen continent is not its extreme climate. The true anomaly is human. While global populations naturally gravitate toward warm coastal zones, Siberia is home to over 30 million people. Bustling high-rise cities and massive industrial complexes stand on top of permafrost, ground that has remained solidly frozen for tens of thousands of years. How did millions of human beings end up living in the coldest inhabited place on Earth? Why do they remain in a land that actively rejects human survival? The answer lies in a complex tapestry of geopolitical ambition, forced migration, and a monumental experiment in economic geography. Long before the Soviet Union, the Tsars viewed Siberia as an untamed frontier, valued for its fur trade, the soft gold of sable, and as a vast natural prison. To the Tsarist Empire, the sheer scale of the Siberian wilderness served as the perfect mechanism for political exile. It was a place where dissidents and criminals could be cast out, far beyond the margins of civilized society, with the frozen landscape itself acting as the prison walls. During this early era, the settlement of Siberia remained sparse, driven by Cossack explorers who established fortified outposts along major river systems. However, the true transformation of Siberia into an industrialized urban empire was engineered in the 20th century. Driven by ideological zeal, Soviet planners embarked on an unprecedented campaign to conquer the permafrost. They looked upon Siberia's immense geological wealth, its deposits of coal, iron, nickel, gold, and diamonds, and decided that nature must be tamed, regardless of the human or economic cost. The primary instrument of this conquest was the Gulag prison system. Under Joseph Stalin, hundreds of thousands of forced laborers were deployed to the most inhospitable corners of the Arctic. With minimal tools and inadequate food, these prisoners built the roads, laid the railways, dug the mines, and raised the foundations of cities that should never have existed. This historical phenomenon is what geographers refer to as the Siberian Curse. The Soviet command economy operated with an absolute disregard for market forces and the physical realities of distance and cold. In a free market society, the prohibitive cost of transporting fuel, food, and building materials over thousands of miles of frozen terrain would have prevented large-scale urbanization. But the Soviet states simply subsidized the cold, creating artificial cities to act as permanent labor pools. When the Soviet Union collapsed in 1991, the subsidies vanished, but the people remained. Millions of residents found themselves trapped in declining industrial towns with bankrupt factories and failing infrastructure, unable to afford homes in warmer European Russian cities. Nowhere is the clash between human endurance and industrial survival more evident than on the Yamal Peninsula. Extending deep into the Kara Sea above the Arctic Circle, Yamal carries a name in the native Nenets language that translates to the end of the earth. It is a flat, wind-swept wilderness of continuous permafrost, where winter temperatures routinely plummet to minus 50 degrees Celsius, and the polar night blankets the landscape in total darkness for months on end. In this extreme environment, the Earth acts as a perfect natural time capsule. It was here that scientists discovered the incredibly well-preserved remains of a baby woolly mammoth, locked in the frozen mud for 42,000 years, looking as though it had simply fallen asleep. Yet, beneath this frozen graveyard of prehistoric giants lies one of the largest strategic natural gas reserves on the planet. The Russian state has transformed this remote tundra into a multi-billion-dollar industrial enclave. Giant extraction facilities rise from the snow like futuristic fortresses, illuminated by the orange glow of gas flares against the dark Arctic sky. Heavy machinery operates continuously, and massive, nuclear-powered icebreaker ships slice through the thick Arctic ice to transport this valuable energy to global markets. The survival of these facilities depends on a constant war against the cold, where machinery must be kept running 24 hours a day, because a single engine shutdown can cause oil to freeze solid and metal components to crack under the extreme stress. In the direct shadow of these industrial titans, the indigenous Nenets people continue to live much as their ancestors did. As one of the last truly nomadic groups in the Arctic, the Nenets survive by herding massive reindeer populations across the tundra. The reindeer is the absolute foundation of their existence, providing transportation, food, clothing, and the hide used to construct their conical tents. Twice a year, Nenets families migrate across hundreds of miles of open wilderness, navigating by the stars and the wind. This ancient rhythm is entirely dependent on the stability of the environment. The frozen rivers must remain solid to act as highways, and the snow must remain soft enough for the reindeer to find the nutrient-rich lichen beneath. But the modern world is rapidly closing in on this ancient way of life. The massive pipelines of the gas fields cut across traditional migration routes, and the warming climate is causing early, unpredictable ice thaws that threaten the survival of both the herds and the nomads who guide them. For the Nenets, however, stopping is not an option. In the harsh reality of the Siberian tundra, movement is the only path to survival. If you are ready for this epic story, Drop a comment telling me where in the world you are watching from, hit the like button, subscribe to Unseen Nations, and turn on notifications so you never miss more of our upcoming videos. Join this community of explorers as we prepare to travel deeper into the frozen heart of this wilderness, where we will uncover the darkest histories and the most extreme cities ever built by human hands. To travel eastward from the gas fields of Yamal is to descend into a realm where winter is not merely a season, but the primary state of existence. This journey leads directly into Yakutia, a vast territory occupying nearly 1/6 of the Russian landmass. Despite its colossal geographic scale, stretching across 3 distinct time zones and matching the physical size of India, Yakutia is home to fewer than 1 million inhabitants. It is a land dominated by a vast, quiet emptiness, where human communities exist as isolated islands in an ocean of ancient forest and frozen tundra. At the absolute heart of this vast wilderness lies Yakutsk, widely recognized as the coldest major city on Earth. In Yakutsk, a city of over 300,000 residents, the winter is a relentless force that shapes every facet of human design. From the moment the temperature drops below -40 degrees Celsius, a thick, motionless ice fog blankets the streets, created by the moisture of car exhausts, industrial chimneys, and human breath. This fog reduces visibility to a few meters, transforming the city into a surreal, monochrome landscape where apartment buildings appear as towering, ghostly silhouettes. To walk through these streets is to experience cold in its most aggressive form. Exposed skin begins to burn within minutes, and the eyelashes of pedestrians quickly freeze into delicate, white needles of frost. The very survival of Yakutsk is a triumph of specialized civil engineering. The city is built entirely on continuous permafrost, a layer of frozen soil and ice that extends hundreds of meters into the earth. This frozen ground possesses the structural strength of solid concrete, but it hides a dangerous vulnerability. If a building is constructed directly on the surface, the heat escaping from the structure will slowly conduct into the ground beneath, melting the permafrost. The solid ice turns to liquid mud, causing the foundations to shift, walls to crack, and entire multi-story apartment blocks to collapse. To prevent this, every major building in Yakutsk must stand on heavy concrete piles, driven deep into the permanently frozen layers of the earth. These stilts elevate the structures several feet above the ground, allowing the freezing Arctic winds to sweep underneath, keeping the permafrost frozen and the city stable. Despite the severe environment, daily life in Yakutsk does not grind to a halt. In the central open-air markets, merchants stand outside for hours on end, surrounded by a frozen harvest. There is no need for artificial refrigeration here. The air itself is far colder than any commercial freezer. Vendors display massive river fish, such as muksun and nelma, frozen solid and stacked upright in wooden baskets like pale silver bouquets. To cut these fish, merchants use heavy axes, slicing through the frozen flesh as if it were firewood. Alongside the fish are blocks of frozen milk, slabs of horse meat, and reindeer carcasses, all preserved perfectly by the natural climate. The resilience of these vendors is extraordinary, their faces framed by heavy fur hoods coated in thick layers of frost as they exchange brief words with passing shoppers. This extreme environment has deeply influenced the traditional cuisine of Yakutia, where food is viewed not just as sustenance, but as a vital shield against the cold. The most famous local delicacy is stroganina, a dish made by taking a freshly caught, frozen river fish and shaving it into thin, curling ribbons using an extremely sharp knife. These delicate curls of raw, frozen fish are eaten immediately, dipped in a mixture of coarse salt and black pepper, melting instantly on the tongue to release a rich, fatty flavor. Another beloved dish is indigirka salad, consisting of frozen fish diced into small cubes and tossed with raw onions, oil, and spices. Rich in fats, proteins, and essential vitamins, these frozen delicacies provide the high caloric energy required to maintain core body temperature when the external world is frozen solid. How would a person adapt to a lifestyle where fresh vegetables are a rare luxury, and the air itself is a constant physical threat? Would the quiet beauty of this frozen world outweigh the severe isolation? Viewers are invited to share their thoughts in the comments below, painting a picture of how they believe they would fare under such conditions. Leaving the elevated high-rises of Yakutsk behind, the route travels even deeper into the eastern mountains, following the path of the Indigirka River toward Oymyakon, the undisputed pole of cold. Oymyakon is a small settlement of fewer than 800 residents situated in a high-altitude valley surrounded by mountain ranges. This geography creates a powerful meteorological phenomenon known as temperature inversion. During the long winter nights, the cold, heavy air slides down the mountain slopes, pooling in the basin of the valley, with nowhere to escape. The result is a concentration of cold so extreme that Oymyakon holds the record for the lowest permanently inhabited temperature ever recorded, reaching a historic low of -71.2 degrees Celsius. In Oymyakon, the limits of human endurance are tested on a daily basis. The cold is a constant physical barrier to modern infrastructure. Municipal running water is an impossibility. Water mains buried in the ground would freeze and shatter instantly. Instead, residents must harvest blocks of ice from the frozen river, hauling them home in wooden sleds to be melted slowly beside domestic stoves. Cars represent a massive logistical challenge. If an engine is turned off in the open air, the oil will freeze into a solid paste and the block will crack, rendering the vehicle useless. Consequently, those who do not possess heated garages must leave their car engines running continuously for months on end, a constant rumble echoing through the frozen village. Even childhood is redefined by the cold. In Oymyakon, the local school remains open and active through the darkest months of the year. The children of this valley walk to class through the frozen fog. It is only when the temperature drops below -52 degrees Celsius that the youngest students are permitted to stay home. For the older children, classes continue until the thermometer passes -55. One must wonder about the profound emotional resilience of parents who bundle their children in heavy layers of wool and fur, sending them out into an environment that could claim a life within minutes if a child were to lose their way. This enduring battle against the elements is not a burden born in misery, but a source of quiet, collective pride. The residents of these cold outposts share a deep, unspoken bond forged by shared survival. To support the preservation of these remarkable human stories, viewers who find value in this journey are encouraged to hit the like button and share this documentary with others. Letting the world see the incredible limits of human adaptation helps keep the history of these unseen nations alive. As the shadow of the polar night deepens over the valley of Oymyakon, the focus must shift to the vast, silent wilderness that lies beyond the settlements, where a dark human history remains written in the very soil of the tundra. To understand the true depth of the Siberian curse, one must leave the frozen high-rises behind and travel along a path carved directly through the heart of human suffering. Stretching for more than 2,000 kilometers across the remote eastern wilderness, the Kolyma Highway is a thin ribbon of gravel and dirt connecting the interior of Yakutia with the isolated Pacific port of Magadan. To the world, this is a vital transport route, but to history, it is known by a far more chilling name, the Road of Bones. The Kolyma region is a land of extreme geographical contrasts. It is a vast basin of jagged mountains, dense forests, and swampy summer bogs, where winter temperatures routinely drop below -50 degrees Celsius. For centuries, this territory remained virtually untouched, guarded by its severe climate and absolute isolation. But in the early decades of the 20th century, Soviet geologists discovered gold, tin, and platinum beneath the frozen riverbeds and rocky slopes. Desperate for capital to fund its rapid industrialization, the Soviet state created Dalstroy, a specialized state trust tasked with exploiting the natural resources of the Far East. The primary workforce for this colossal enterprise would be supplied by the Gulag prison system. Starting in the 1930s, hundreds of thousands of forced laborers, known as zeks, were transported to Kolyma. They arrived by cargo ships that sailed from Vladivostok through the stormy waters of the Sea of Okhotsk, only to be handed picks, shovels, and wooden wheelbarrows and ordered to build a highway through some of the most difficult terrain on Earth. The construction of the Kolyma Highway was a brutal battle of human flesh against iron-hard permafrost. The prisoners had to clear dense taiga forests, blast through solid granite cliffs, and construct bridges over raging rivers. In the summer, the top layer of permafrost melted into a thick, mosquito-infested swamp. In the winter, the ground froze to the hardness of concrete. To break the soil, prisoners had to build massive bonfires to thaw the earth, or blast it with dynamite before they could dig. Conditions inside the camps were designed to extract maximum labor at minimum cost. Rations were strictly tied to work quotas. Those who fell behind due to exhaustion or frostbite had their food portions reduced, trapping them in a fatal cycle of starvation. The cold was a constant, merciless predator. During the deepest winter months, if a worker paused for more than a few minutes to rest, the cold would slowly claim them, their body stiffening in the snow. Because the ground was frozen so solid, digging traditional graves for the dead was an almost impossible task. Dalstroy administrators resolved this problem with brutal efficiency, laying the bodies of deceased prisoners directly into the roadbed. They were covered with layer upon layer of gravel, clay, and crushed stone, compacted by the weight of trucks. Over 2 decades, tens of thousands of individuals were entombed beneath the road. The Kolyma Highway is not merely a transport route. It is a 2,000-kilometer graveyard, where every mile represents lives lost to the industrial ambitions of a totalitarian state. How does a modern society reconcile its daily life with such a dark and tragic foundation? Can a road built on sacrifice ever be viewed simply as infrastructure, or must it forever remain a sacred site of mourning? You are invited to share your thoughts in the comments below. The Kolyma Highway eventually ends at Magadan, an isolated port city nestled between the mountains and the gray waters of the Sea of Okhotsk. During the height of the Gulag era, Magadan served as the primary administrative gateway to the eastern camps. It was here that ships unloaded their human cargo, and it was here that the journey into the frozen interior began. The city's geography is defined by its maritime climate, where heavy Pacific blizzards blanket the streets in deep drifts of snow, and cold sea winds sweep through the concrete apartment blocks. High on a hill overlooking Magadan stands the Mask of Sorrow, a colossal concrete monument dedicated to the victims of the Kolyma camps. Designed by the renowned sculptor Ernst Nizvestny, whose own father perished in the Gulag, the monument stands 15 meters tall. It depicts a giant weeping face, with tears in the form of smaller human masks falling from one eye. The other eye is represented by a barred window, symbolizing the imprisonment of the soul. Inside the hollow concrete structure, a replica of a typical prison cell has been preserved, demanding silence from all who enter. The demographic legacy of this dark history remains visible in the modern population of Magadan. When the camps were closed in the 1950s, many former prisoners found themselves unable to leave. Some were barred from returning to major cities due to administrative restrictions. Others had lost their families and homes. With nowhere else to go, they stayed, building lives in the shadow of the camps. Today, The descendants of the prisoners and the descendants of the camper guards live side by side in Magadan, maintaining a quiet, resilient community on the edge of the world. To keep these profound chapters of human history alive and ensure that the stories of those who survived are never forgotten, sharing this documentary with others is a vital act of preservation. Please hit the like button, subscribe to Unseen Nations, and share this video. By doing so, support is directly given to the continuous exploration of the world's most extreme and hidden landscapes. The path now leads away from the tragic roads of the mainland, heading toward a dynamic and volatile peninsula where geological forces match the intense drama of its history. To travel even further north, past the tree line where the last stunted larches disappear into the frozen ground, is to find the ultimate testament to human stubbornness. Above the Arctic Circle, on the edge of the Taimyr Peninsula, lies a city that shouldn't exist. Norilsk. This is the northernmost city in the world, with a population exceeding 100,000 people. It is an urban island of concrete blocks and smoking industrial chimneys, completely marooned in an ocean of permafrost. The isolation of Norilsk is absolute. There are no roads or railways connecting this frozen outpost to the rest of Russia. The only way in or out is by air or by boat along the Yenisei River when the ice thaws during the brief summer months. If a winter storm hits, which happens frequently, flights can be delayed for weeks at a time, leaving the residents entirely cut off from the rest of the world. Goods and food must be flown in, making the cost of basic groceries astronomical. Why would anyone choose to build a city of nearly 180,000 people in a place so utterly cut off from the human world? The answer lies deep beneath the frozen earth, but the price of extracting it is paid in human breath. Winter in Norilsk lasts for 9 months of the year, with average temperatures hovering around -25 degrees Celsius. But it is not the temperature alone that terrifies. It is the wind. Severe Arctic blizzards, known locally as the purga, sweep across the tundra with hurricane-force speeds. The wind is so violent that it can easily knock a grown person off their feet. During these storms, the city's authorities must restrict civilian driving, and workers commute to the processing plants in tightly packed convoys of heavy-duty buses. A simple walk from an apartment building to the local grocery store becomes an extreme expedition where losing one's grip on a handrail can mean being swept away into the blinding white dark. This frozen fortress was born from a dark alliance between geology and state coercion. In the 1920s, geologists discovered that the Taimyr Peninsula sat atop some of the richest copper, nickel, and palladium deposits on the planet. The Soviet Union, desperate to industrialize, resolved to conquer this remote treasure trove. Just as in Kolyma, the state turned to the Gulag. In 1935, the Norilsk Corrective Labor Camp was established. Over the next 2 decades, more than 400,000 prisoners passed through this frozen hell. They worked in the open pits, dug deep shafts into the granite, and poured the foundations of the smelting complexes under conditions that defy human imagination. The archives officially record over 16,000 deaths from cold, exhaustion, and starvation, but historians believe the true human toll is far higher. The very streets of Norilsk are built on top of a silent, frozen mass grave of those who paid with their lives to build the world's largest heavy metal smelting complex. Today, the descendants of those prisoners and the workers who followed them in search of high wages live in an environment that has been radically transformed by industrial activity. Norilsk has the tragic distinction of being one of the most polluted cities on Earth. Day and night, the towering smokestacks of the metal complexes belch massive plumes of sulfur dioxide, heavy metals, and particulate matter into the Arctic sky. The air often carries a sharp, suffocating taste of sulfur, a constant reminder of the chemical cocktail suspended in the atmosphere. For nearly 30 kilometers around the city, the boreal forest has completely died, transformed into a barren wasteland of skeletal, acid-burnt trees. In the winter, the snow does not fall white. It is regularly colored yellow, gray, and even deep black by the industrial fallout that settles over the city like a permanent shroud. This extreme pollution cuts the average life expectancy of a Norilsk resident short by up to 10 years compared to the national average. Only a tiny fraction of the population can be classified as completely healthy, with respiratory illnesses, skin disorders, and cancer rates soaring far above normal levels. Yet people continue to live and work here. The state and the mining corporation, Nornickel, maintain the population through a mechanism known as the Golden Trap. Workers are paid wages that are 2 to 3 times higher than the national average, supplemented by extensive vacation time and early retirement benefits. But this wealth is often an illusion. The high cost of living eats away at their savings, and because the city's housing market is isolated, their apartments are virtually worthless on the mainland. Many find themselves trapped in a vicious cycle, unable to sell their properties for enough money to purchase a home in a warmer city, forced to keep working in the toxic air until their bodies finally give out. The physical toll of the pollution is matched by a severe psychological burden. For 45 days each winter, the sun never rises above the horizon, plunging Norilsk into the absolute darkness of the polar night. This prolonged absence of light disrupts the human body's natural rhythms, causing chronic insomnia, anxiety, and deep depression. To combat this, residents fill their apartments with UV lamps to simulate natural sunlight, and they gather in tight-knit social circles. In a place where the external world is so hostile, the warmth inside homes becomes sacred. The extreme conditions have fostered a unique culture of intense solidarity and brotherhood. When the survival of your neighbor can depend on your willingness to share warmth or pull them from a blizzard, superficial divisions melt away. Let us pause and reflect on this extraordinary paradox of human existence. Would you be willing to sacrifice 10 years of your life expectancy in exchange for financial security and a community bound by the ultimate code of survival? What is the true value of a comfortable life when the very air you breathe is a toxic threat? Share your thoughts in the comments below, and let us discuss the boundaries of what humans will endure for survival. Deep within the geological vault of Yakutia, the frozen earth conceals a treasure of unimaginable value, protected by a fortress of ice and stone. To uncover this wealth, the Soviet Union did not merely build factories. It carved a colossal void into the very crust of the planet. This is the Mirny Diamond Mine, a terrifyingly vast open-pit chasm located on the edge of the remote town of Mirny. Looking down from the rim of this abyss, the surrounding apartment buildings and industrial structures appear like fragile toys balanced precariously on the lip of a giant, spiraling crater. The pit plunges more than 525 meters into the earth and stretches over 1.2 kilometers in diameter, ranking as one of the largest man-made excavations on the face of the globe. The story of this massive scar began in the summer of 1955, during a period of intense geopolitical competition. A team of Soviet geologists, searching the Siberian platform for primary sources of diamonds, noticed traces of kimberlite, a rare volcanic rock that serves as the natural host for diamonds. Upon realizing the immense scale of the deposit, the geologists sent a historic, coded telegram to Moscow. "I am smoking the pipe of peace. The tobacco is excellent." The message set off a wave of secret state activity. The Soviet Union, desperately needing industrial and gem-quality diamonds to fund its military and industrial ambitions during the Cold War, resolved to conquer this remote corner of Siberia. But transforming a barren patch of permafrost into a functioning industrial hub was a monumental challenge. The winter temperatures in the region routinely drop below -40 degrees Celsius, turning the ground into a substance as hard as solid granite. Standard excavation tools shattered upon impact with the frozen earth. To bypass this barrier, Soviet engineers resorted to extreme methods. They deployed jet engines, directing blast furnaces of hot air onto the stubborn permafrost to melt the surface layers. When the heat failed to penetrate deep enough, workers laid massive dynamite charges, blasting the frozen rock into manageable fragments. During the brief summer months, the ground thawed into a treacherous, shifting slush that swallowed heavy machinery, requiring buildings to be constructed on elevated piles driven deep into the stable, permanently frozen layers beneath. At its peak in the 1960s, the Mir mine was a frenzy of industrial activity, producing over 10 million carats of diamonds annually. Massive, multi-ton rock-hauling trucks spiraled slowly down the steep, dusty roads of the pit, looking like tiny insects as they descended into the dark depths of the canyon to retrieve the precious kimberlite. The concentration of diamonds in the upper layers was extraordinarily high, yielding pristine gems that funded the strategic reserves of the state. The pit was so deep and massive that it began to alter the local atmospheric pressure, creating powerful downward air currents. These vortexes were strong enough to drag helicopters down into the abyss, prompting authorities to restrict flights directly over the open crater. Although open-pit operations ceased in 2001, the search for diamonds did not end. The mining giant Alrosa invested heavily to transition the mine into an underground operation, tunneling deep beneath the floor of the abandoned pit. But the legacy of Mirny remains a complex paradox. For decades, the mine produced billions of dollars in wealth, yet the town built to support it remained isolated and barren, relying on long, precarious supply lines for basic necessities. What drives a society to carve such a massive void into the frozen crust of the earth, searching for glittering treasures while struggling to survive the elements? Viewers are invited to leave a comment sharing their thoughts on this incredible human drive. If this journey into the hidden wonders of the Far East has captured the imagination, hitting the like button and subscribing to Unseen Nations ensures that these remarkable stories continue to reach explorers across the globe. Leaving the industrial void of Mirny behind, the journey shifts from the scars of human ambition to the monumental architecture of nature itself. Traveling eastward along the great water systems of Yakutia reveals a landscape where stone giants stand guard over the wilderness. These are the Lena Pillars, a colossal wall of limestone towers that rises more than 300 feet directly into the Siberian sky along the banks of the Lena River. Stretching for several miles, this natural stone fortress presents an overwhelming sight, its jagged spires and vertical cliffs contrasting sharply with the vast, quiet emptiness of the surrounding taiga forest. The origin of the Lena Pillars dates back more than 500 million years to the Cambrian period, when the region was covered by a warm, shallow sea. Over eons, layers of marine sediments compacted into thick beds of limestone. Tectonic forces eventually pushed these ancient seabeds upward, exposing them to the harsh elements of the Siberian climate. The relentless forces of nature, extreme temperature swings, heavy winds, and frost erosion slowly began their work. Water would seep into the tiny cracks of the limestone during the brief thaws, only to freeze and expand with immense force during the long winters, shattering the outer layers of stone. Over millions of years, this natural sculpting process carved the cliffs into a complex network of narrow towers, deep caves, and majestic arches. During the winter, from December to April, the massive Lena River freezes completely, transforming into a thick, spectacular ice highway. This solid ice sheet provides the only direct path to the base of the pillars. Travelers can drive vehicles, ride snowmobiles, or glide silently, on dog sleds across the frozen river, looking up at the immense stone towers that rise like ancient temple ruins from the white ice. Standing at the base of these stone giants, surrounded by absolute silence and the cold, clean air of the wilderness, one is reminded of the transience of human life when compared to the deep time of the earth. This landscape of fire, ice, and stone is a reminder that the world still holds places of pure, untamed majesty. To help preserve the history of these spectacular natural wonders and support the continuing exploration of our planet's most extreme regions, sharing this video with fellow travelers is a powerful way to expand our community. As the shadow of the stone giants grows long over the frozen Lena River, the journey prepares to venture into a land of volatile fire, where geothermal heat battles the eternal winter. Leaving behind the silent, monumental limestone pillars of the Lena River, the journey turns toward the easternmost edge of the Eurasian continent, where the flat, frozen plains of the Siberian interior give way to a landscape of violent geological activity. Here lies the Kamchatka Peninsula, a massive finger of land extending 1,200 kilometers into the cold, stormy waters of the Pacific Ocean and the Sea of Okhotsk. Kamchatka is a place where the rules of the frozen north are challenged by the immense heat of the Earth's interior. This is a territory defined not by static ice, but by a constant, dramatic battle between fire and frost. The geological origin of Kamchatka is tied to its position along the Pacific Ring of Fire, a volatile zone where tectonic plates crash and slide beneath one another. This subduction zone has created one of the most volcanically active regions on the planet. More than 300 volcanoes dot the peninsula, forming a jagged backbone of dark stone and white ice that stretches from the northern tundra to the southern capes. Of these, 29 remain active, their vents constantly releasing plumes of gas, ash, and molten rock. For millions of years, these volcanoes have shaped and reshaped the peninsula, creating a landscape that is geologically young, unpredictable, and raw. The absolute sovereign of this volcanic empire is Klyuchevskaya Sopka, a giant symmetrical cone that rises 15,400 feet above sea level, making it the tallest active volcano in Eurasia. To look upon Klyuchevskaya Sopka is to witness a terrifyingly beautiful paradox. Its steep slopes are covered in thick, ancient glaciers and permanent snowfields, yet its summit is a boiling cauldron of liquid rock. When the volcano erupts, red-hot lava flows sliced through the white ice sheets, creating massive clouds of steam and sending torrents of melted water, ash, and rocks rushing down the mountain valleys in devastating mudflows. This constant clash of elements creates a unique sensory experience, where the silence of the Arctic winter is periodically shattered by the deep, low-frequency rumble of the Earth's awakening. How does one comprehend a world where the ground beneath is boiling while the air above is freezing? Would the sight of molten fire carving through fields of pure white ice evoke a sense of fear, or would it inspire a deeper appreciation for the volatile beauty of our planet? Viewers are encouraged to leave a comment sharing their thoughts on this dramatic meeting of elements, adding their voices to our growing global community of explorers. If this exploration of the volatile frontiers of the Far East has captured your interest, hitting the like button and sharing this video supports our mission to document these unseen corners of the world. Venture deeper into the interior of this volcanic wilderness, navigating through deep mountain passes where the snow can accumulate to depths of several meters, to discover a hidden sanctuary of geothermal heat. This is the Valley of Geysers, a spectacular hydrothermal canyon located within the Kronotsky Nature Reserve. Discovered entirely by accident in 1941 by the legendary geologist Tatyana Ustinova, the valley remained a secret to the outside world for centuries, protected by its absolute geographical isolation. Within this narrow ravine, the Earth's crust is so thin that the underground water systems are heated to boiling point by the magma reservoirs below, creating a hyperactive network of geysers, hot springs, and boiling mud pots. The undisputed centerpiece of this valley is the giant geyser, a massive hydrothermal vent that erupts with dramatic regularity. When pressure reaches its peak, the geyser shoots a towering column of boiling water and steam up to 131 feet into the cold Siberian air, accompanied by a deafening roar that echoes off the canyon walls. Around these steaming vents, hot pools and mineral springs have created a highly specialized microclimate. The warm, mineral-rich waters sustain vibrant colonies of heat-loving algae and microorganisms, which paint the surrounding rocks in brilliant bands of red, orange, yellow, and green. This colorful oasis stands in stark contrast to the white snow of the surrounding mountains, a secret garden of warmth and life hidden in the middle of a frozen wilderness. The Valley of Geysers is also a dynamic ecosystem that remains at the mercy of the natural forces that created it. In 2007, a massive landslide occurred, burying much of the valley under millions of cubic meters of rock, mud, and ice, threatening to extinguish the geysers forever. Yet, the geothermal pressure could not be contained. Within a few years, the hot waters forced their way back to the surface, and a subsequent natural shift in 2013 restored many of the geysers to their former glory, proving that the volcanic heart of Kamchatka is far too powerful to be silenced by the shifting Earth. This localized warmth has a profound impact on the wildlife of the peninsula, serving as a vital survival aid during the long, harsh winters. The warm ground of the valley remains free of heavy snow cover, attracting the undisputed king of the peninsula, the Kamchatka brown bear. Standing nearly 10 feet tall when upright and weighing more than 1,000 pounds, these massive predators are among the largest brown bears on Earth. Supported by a thick layer of fat and a heavy double coat, the bears are well equipped to survive the extreme cold. But the geothermal oasis of the valley offers a welcome relief, providing a place to forage for early vegetation and warm themselves during the early spring thaws. As the spring turns to summer, the bears leave the thermal valleys and migrate toward the fast-flowing rivers of the peninsula, preparing for one of the most spectacular wildlife events on Earth. Each year, millions of Pacific salmon swim upstream from the ocean to return to their native spawning grounds. For the brown bears, this migration is an abundant harvest, essential for building the fat reserves required to survive the upcoming winter hibernation. The bears gather along the riverbanks, utilizing a variety of hunting strategies. A bear will sit motionless in the cold water like a moss-covered boulder, waiting for the split second a salmon swims past, before lunging with explosive speed and snatching the slippery fish with its massive paws. This raw display of survival is a reminder that in the wild corners of Siberia, life is defined by adaptation, resilience, and the relentless pursuit of warmth. To help us continue uncovering these incredible stories of survival and protect the history of these spectacular natural sanctuaries, viewers are invited to subscribe to Unseen Nations and turn on notifications. Sharing this journey with fellow travelers ensures that the legacy of these wild frontiers remains alive for generations to come. As the volcanic peaks of Kamchatka fade into the misty horizon of the Pacific Ocean, the focus must shift to a chain of remote islands that stretch like stepping stones toward the south, guarding a region of intense territorial dispute and unparalleled avian majesty. At the absolute edge of the map, where the Eurasian landmass terminates into the cold currents of the Bering Sea, lies Chukotka. This is a frontier of absolute isolation, a wind-swept expanse of tundra where winter reigns for 10 months of the year. The cold here is not just a thermal drop. It is an active physical presence accompanied by ferocious coastal winds that can freeze exposed flesh in a matter of seconds. In this ultimate wilderness, human survival has historically depended on a deep, sacred alliance with nature, most notably represented by the legendary partnership between the indigenous Chukchi people and the Siberian husky. For thousands of years, the Chukchi bred these remarkable dogs not merely as beasts of burden, but as vital extensions of their own families. Possessing thick, water-resistant double coats, compact bodies, and an astonishing metabolic efficiency, these dogs were engineered by nature and human selection to perform under the most brutal conditions. During the long, freezing polar nights, when the temperature inside the traditional skin tents dropped to dangerous levels, the dogs were brought inside to sleep beside the children, their body heat acting as a living blanket. This close physical and emotional proximity forged a level of mutual understanding and loyalty rarely seen in the animal kingdom. The true depth of this bond was demonstrated to the world in 1925, during a historic crisis known as the Great Race of Mercy. When a deadly outbreak of diphtheria threatened the isolated town of Nome, Alaska, and extreme winter storms prevented all aircraft and ships from delivering medicine, a relay of dog sled teams was organized to carry the life-saving serum. Traversing over 620 miles of treacherous, wind-swept ice and blinding blizzards in temperatures averaging -40 degrees Celsius, these dogs pushed through the limits of physical endurance. The lead dogs possessed an independent instinct so finely tuned that they could detect the subtle vibrations of shifting, cracked ice beneath the snow, actively disobeying their driver's commands to prevent the sleds from plunging into the freezing waters below. It was a triumph of instinct and loyalty that saved hundreds of lives, cementing the Siberian Husky as a symbol of pure resilience. Further south along the coast, human life finds a modern outpost in Anadyr, the administrative capital of Chukotka. Standing as a collection of brightly colored concrete buildings perched on the edge of the Bering Sea, Anadyr is a striking visual contrast to the monotonous white of the surrounding tundra. To combat the severe psychological toll of the long winter and the complete absence of natural green spaces, the city's architects painted the apartment blocks in vibrant shades of red, yellow, and blue, decorating them with massive murals of indigenous wildlife and cultural symbols. Like other major Siberian settlements, the entire city stands on concrete piles driven deep into the permafrost, elevated above the ground to keep the foundations stable. Yet, life in this frontier outpost comes at an extraordinary cost. With no land connections to the rest of Russia, every piece of food, medicine, and fuel must be transported by air or sea during the short navigation season, making Anadyr one of the most expensive cities in the nation. Because of its strategic proximity to maritime borders, the entire region is classified as a sensitive security zone, requiring special entry permits from the Federal Security Service for all who wish to visit. This surreal existence raises profound questions about the lengths to which humans will go to carve out a home on the margins of the habitable world. What does it say about the human mind that it must paint its concrete shelters in the colors of a spring dawn just to withstand the crushing darkness of the polar night? Would one find peace in this absolute edge of the earth, or would the weight of the isolation slowly erode the spirit? Sharing reflections in the comments below allows this community of explorers to connect across vast distances. If this journey into the unseen corners of our planet continues to inspire, hitting the like button and sharing this documentary is a powerful way to support the preservation of these remarkable human histories. Where Chutka ends, the Kuril Islands begin, stretching for over 600 miles toward Japan like a giant volcanic spine rising from the stormy waters of the Pacific Ocean. This chain of 56 islands is a place of raw, untamed geography, where the climate is defined by extreme instability. Even during the brief summer months, the islands are frequently blanketed in a thick, ghostly sea fog, while the winters are swept by relentless Pacific blizzards that bury settlements in deep drifts of snow. The region is also geologically volatile, home to dozens of active volcanoes that periodically reshape the landscape with flows of ash and lava. The Kurils are also marked by a complex geopolitical history. Disputed between Russia and Japan since the end of World War II, the four southernmost islands remain a source of diplomatic tension, leaving the entire chain strategically isolated. For the few thousand residents who inhabit these remote outposts, Daily life is a lesson in patience and self-reliance. The islands are heavily dependent on occasional supply ships from the mainland. When rough seas and heavy storms block the maritime routes, as they often do for weeks at a time, the settlements are completely cut off, forcing residents to rely on their own stockpiles and local fisheries to survive. In the stormy skies over these isolated shores, the Steller sea eagle reigns as one of the heaviest and most majestic birds of prey on Earth. With a massive wingspan exceeding 8 feet, a powerful bright yellow beak, and razor-sharp talons, this predator is perfectly adapted to the freezing marine environment. The eagle possesses a unique, transparent inner eyelid known as a nictitating membrane, which acts as natural goggles, protecting its eyes from the freezing spray and biting winds as it dives at high speed to snatch salmon from the cold ocean waves. The hunt is a display of incredible precision, but survival in this harsh environment also requires a deep, instinctual wisdom. On occasion, the eagle will lock its talons into a fish that is too heavy, such as a large pufferfish that suddenly inflates to create immense water resistance. In these moments, the eagle must make a split-second decision to let go of its prize, choosing to sacrifice a meal rather than be dragged beneath the freezing currents to its death. It is a powerful reminder that in the wild, knowing when to release a target is just as vital to survival as the strength required to capture it. As the stormy cliffs of the Kuril Islands fade into the cold mist of the Pacific, the journey prepares to venture back toward the deep mainland forests, where the ultimate shadows of the Siberian wilderness await their turn to speak. Deep within the shadows of the Russian Far East, the endless plains of tundra transition into a dense, whispering fortress of green and white. This is the southern taiga, a vast wilderness where forests of larch, oak, and cedar blanket the rugged terrain. In this silent sanctuary, winter is still a formidable adversary, with temperatures plunging below -40 degrees Celsius. Yet, these ancient woods serve as the final stronghold for some of the rarest and most majestic predators on Earth, animals that have adapted to live and hunt in the deep snow. It is a world where survival is a silent game of patience, strength, and perfect camouflage. At the absolute peak of this frozen food chain reigns the Siberian tiger, also known as the Amur tiger, the largest of all cat species. To see a Siberian tiger moving through the snow-laden forest is to witness a masterpiece of evolutionary design. Weighing up to 660 pounds and stretching more than 10 feet in length, this magnificent predator is built to withstand the worst of the northern winter. A thick 2-inch layer of fat covers its abdomen, providing vital insulation against the biting cold, while its dense coat grows pale and thick during the winter months. Unlike its tropical relatives, the Siberian tiger must hunt across immense territories, sometimes patrolling hundreds of square miles just to find enough prey to survive. The hunt itself is a testament to calculated patience. In a landscape where prey is scarce, a tiger cannot afford to waste precious energy on failed chases. It will stalk a deer or a wild boar for hours, moving as silently as a ghost despite its massive size, its wide paws spreading its weight across the soft snow. When the moment to strike arrives, the tiger releases a low-frequency roar that is so deep and powerful it can cause a target to freeze in terror for a fraction of a second. With an explosive burst of speed, the tiger can leap 20 feet through the air, overpowering its prey in a sudden attack. A successful kill can yield over 60 pounds of meat, providing enough sustenance to sustain the cat through days of hunger and bitter cold. By the 1940s, human hunting had reduced the wild population to a mere 40 individuals. Through strict protection, the Siberian tiger has staged a remarkable recovery. Though with fewer than 600 individuals remaining in the wild, its future hangs in a delicate balance. Sharing this beautiful but unforgiving territory is an even rarer ghost of the forest, the Amur leopard. This big cat represents one of the most critically endangered subspecies on the planet, having come dangerously close to absolute extinction near the end of the 20th century, when its numbers fell to approximately 30 individuals. Today, through intense conservation efforts, about 120 of these elusive predators survive in the wild. The Amur leopard is a creature of exquisite adaptation. Its winter coat grows up to 3 inches long, featuring large, widely spaced rings that allow it to blend seamlessly into the dappled light of the frozen birch forests. The leopard's hunting strategy is defined by stealth and explosive agility. Capable of reaching speeds of 37 miles per hour and leaping several times its own body length, it is a highly efficient predator. But in a forest shared with the much larger Siberian tiger and cunning scavengers like wolves, securing a meal is only half the battle. To protect its hard-earned prey from being stolen, the Amur leopard displays incredible physical strength, dragging carcasses that are often heavier than its own body up into the high branches of trees, where it can feed in relative safety. It is a striking display of specialized survival, illustrating how a smaller predator must adapt not only to a harsh climate, but to the pressures of a highly competitive ecosystem. To connect these remote, wild frontiers to the beating heart of civilization, humanity undertook one of the most colossal engineering projects in history. Spanning nearly 5,800 miles and crossing 7 distinct time zones, the Trans-Siberian Railway is the longest railway line on Earth. The journey from the historic streets of Moscow to the Pacific port of Vladivostok takes nearly a full week of continuous travel, offering a slow, mesmerizing view of the changing Siberian landscape. Begun in 1891 under Tsar Alexander III and completed in 1916, the construction of this iron artery was a monumental battle against the geography of the cold. Thousands of workers labored in extreme conditions, cutting through dense forests, blasting tunnels through solid mountain rock, and laying tracks over treacherous permafrost. The railway transformed Siberia from an isolated, legendary wilderness into a region directly connected to the global economy. Even today, the rhythmic clinking of the train wheels against the steel tracks serves as a constant reminder of the human determination that tamed this vast expanse. South of the railway line, the landscape rises dramatically into the Altai Mountains, an ancient backbone of stone and ice where Russia, China, Mongolia, and Kazakhstan meet. This is a region shaped by major tectonic fractures, featuring high peaks, deep valleys, and pristine glacial lakes. In this rugged terrain, travelers seeking to descend into the isolated Chulishman Valley must face the ultimate challenge of the Katu Yarak Pass. This treacherous passage was not designed by professional engineers, but was carved out of the sheer mountainside over 2 years by just 3 local bulldozer drivers. The unpaved gravel road drops over 2,600 feet through 9 sharp hairpin turns, with no guardrails to stand between a vehicle and the sheer cliff edge. The slope is so steep and the gravel so loose that many standard vehicles lose traction, requiring local tractors to pull them to the top. The unwritten rule of the pass dictates that descending vehicles must always yield to those climbing upward, as traction is easily lost on the steep, loose stone. It is a place where human nerve is tested against the vertical realities of the landscape, a reminder that in Siberia, even the roads demand absolute respect. What drives the human spirit to construct such monumental paths through the wilderness, or to live in the direct shadow of such raw, natural power? Can the wild ever truly be conquered, or do humans merely exist there by the grace of a tolerant nature? Those who feel the call of these untamed frontiers are invited to leave a comment sharing the location from which this broadcast is being watched. Hitting the like button, subscribing to Unseen Nations, and enabling notifications directly supports the preservation of these vanishing histories and ensures that the journey to the ends of the earth will continue. Deep within the valleys of the Altai Mountains, geological forces have created one of the most surreal landscapes on the planet, the Akarum stone mushrooms. These bizarre formations, some reaching up to 49 feet in height, consist of slender, soft soil stems topped by massive, hard rock slabs that balance precariously in the wind. Formed over thousands of years as rain and wind eroded the softer surrounding earth, the hard capstones have acted as protective umbrellas, shielding the pillars below from destruction. This landscape remains in a state of constant slow-motion flux. Tremors and continuous weathering eventually cause the older, weakened columns to collapse into the valley floor, while new, miniature sprouts slowly begin to emerge from the earth, ensuring the valley is never truly finished. It is a quiet reminder that in this land, even the stones are alive with movement. In the shadow of these geological anomalies lives a creature that embodies the absolute, untamed defiance of the Siberian wilderness, the wolverine. Though only the size of a medium dog, this solitary carnivore possesses a muscular build, incredibly thick hide, and exceptionally strong jaws capable of crushing frozen bones and tearing through solid ice. The wolverine is notorious for its fearless nature, routinely defending its territory, and kills against much larger predators, like gray wolves, Eurasian lynx, and even brown bears. Guided by an exceptionally sensitive sense of smell, it can detect carcasses buried deep beneath several feet of packed snow from miles away, traveling over 25 miles a day through rugged mountain terrain in its relentless quest for sustenance. One must wonder if this absolute lack of fear is a form of evolutionary madness, or if it is the ultimate survival strategy in a land that shows no mercy. Following the ancient flows of water north from the peaks leads to the vast and silent basin of Lake Teletskoy, the largest lake in the Altai Range and one of the deepest in Siberia. Stretching nearly 50 miles in length, with depths exceeding 1,000 feet, this colossal body of water is fed by more than 70 rivers and streams, keeping its waters extraordinarily cold, dark, and remarkably clear. The extreme isolation of this lake has allowed endemic species, such as the Teletskoy whitefish, to survive and adapt, existing nowhere else on Earth. During calm winter mornings, the frozen, transparent surface of the lake reflects the surrounding snow-covered mountains like a giant natural mirror suspended between earth and sky. To the native Altai people, these waters are deeply sacred, believed to be guarded by ancient spirits resting in the silent depths, far beneath the reach of human eyes. But the ultimate blue eye of the planet lies further east, embedded in a massive tectonic rift. This is Lake Baikal, the oldest and deepest freshwater lake on Earth. Formed over 25 million years ago, this inland sea plunges to a staggering depth of more than 5,200 feet, holding approximately 20% of the world's unfrozen liquid fresh water, a volume that surpasses the combined water of all the North American Great Lakes. In the depths of winter, the surface of Baikal freezes into a thick, crystalline sheet of transparent ice, so clear that observers standing on the surface can peer down into the dark abyss beneath their feet. This frozen crust is etched with giant spiderweb-like cracks and columns of white, trapped methane gas bubbles, frozen in time as they rose from the tectonic vents on the lake bed. This isolated aquatic world is the exclusive home of the Nerpa, the only freshwater seal species on Earth. Reaching up to 4.5 feet in length, these small, round seals are master divers, capable of descending over 1,300 feet and holding their breath for up to 70 minutes while hunting beneath the ice. When the lake freezes completely, the Nerpa uses its exceptionally sharp claws to scratch and maintain breathing holes through the thick ice. Remarkably, these creatures can sleep underwater, rising to the surface to breathe instinctively without fully waking up. How the ancestors of this marine mammal originally traveled thousands of miles from the Arctic Ocean to reach this landlocked lake remains one of the greatest biological mysteries of modern science. What ancient paths did they follow through long-vanished rivers to find a home in the deep heart of Siberia? The journey eventually moves toward the stormy maritime borders, where the mainland gives way to Sakhalin Island. This 600-mile-long territory, shaped like a giant fish, sits as a lone sentinel between Russia and Japan, rich in offshore oil and natural gas, but heavily dependent on precarious maritime transport. Perched on the far southern cape of the island, facing the violent, white-capped waves of the Pacific Ocean, stands the abandoned Aniva Lighthouse. Built by Japanese engineers in 1939, this 95-foot concrete tower was once celebrated as a triumph of coastal engineering. During the Soviet era, it was upgraded with a nuclear isotope generator, allowing it to flash its warning light automatically through the blindest winter storms without the need for a human keeper. Today, the nuclear core has been removed, leaving the tower as a decaying, rust-stained monument standing alone against the relentless spray of salt and ice, a post-apocalyptic monument to human ambitions that have since receded into history. Deep within the western Sayan Mountains, the final chapter of this frozen empire is written in the sharp granite spires of Ergaki Nature Park. Spanning nearly 865,000 acres, this pristine wilderness of sharp peaks and glacial valleys features dramatic formations like Parabola Peak, rising over 7,000 feet in a symmetrical arch, and the Hanging Rock, a colossal stone boulder that balances precariously over the edge of a sheer cliff, defying gravity for thousands of years. It is a landscape that demands humility, reminding all who enter of the absolute dominance of nature. Siberia is more than a place. It is proof that life can endure where nature seems determined to make it impossible. The millions who inhabit these frozen cities do so not by conquering the cold, but by learning to adapt to its unyielding laws. They find warmth in close-knit communities, beauty in the silent frost, and strength in the simple act of enduring another day at the end of the earth. To support the preservation of these vanishing histories and help share the stories of these hidden human landscapes, hitting the like button, subscribing to Unseen Nations, and sharing this documentary with others is a vital act of collaboration. Sharing thoughts in the comments below on which of these extreme regions touched the soul the most allows this community of explorers to connect across vast distances. Until the next adventure into the unknown, keep exploring.